The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage as Catherine stood in what would become their new kitchen, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. The cottage felt different from any of their previous homes. Unlike the grandeur of Kensington Palace or the formality of their other residences, this four-bedroom Victorian cottage on the Windsor estate carried an intimate warmth that made her heart feel lighter. William emerged from upstairs, his hair still tousled from sleep, carrying Prince Louis, who was chattering excitedly about the horses he'd seen through his bedroom window. The little boy's enthusiasm was infectious, and Catherine found herself smiling as she watched her husband attempt to decipher their youngest child's rapid-fire observations about their new surroundings. The decision to move to Windsor hadn't been made lightly. For months, Catherine and William had discussed the practical benefits of relocating closer to Queen Elizabeth, who was spending more time at Windsor Castle. They wanted their children to have a meaningful relationship with their great-grandmother, especially as she entered her 90s. The Queen had always held a special place in Catherine's heart, and she knew how much joy the children brought to Her Majesty's daily routine. Princess Charlotte came bounding down the narrow staircase, her school uniform slightly askew, announcing that she could see the castle from her bedroom window and wondering if they could visit Gongon for tea that afternoon. Catherine exchanged a knowing glance with William. The children had adapted to the move with remarkable ease, perhaps because Windsor represented something closer to a normal family life than they'd experienced before. Prince George appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking more mature than his years. He'd been quietly observing the changes in their family's routine, and Catherine noticed how he seemed to appreciate the increased privacy that Windsor offered. Here, away from the constant scrutiny of central London, he could simply be a boy walking to school rather than a future king under observation. The cottage itself told a story of royal history. Built in 1831, it had housed various members of the royal household over the decades. Catherine had spent hours researching its previous occupants, fascinated by the layers of lives that had unfolded within these walls. She discovered that Group Captain Peter Townsend, the former equerry to King George VI, had once called this place home. The romantic in her was charmed by the cottage's connection to one of the most famous love stories in modern royal history. As William helped Louis into his coat for nursery, Catherine reflected on how different mornings felt here. There was less formality, fewer staff members bustling about, and more opportunities for genuine family moments. The cottage's modest size meant they were constantly crossing paths with each other, creating natural opportunities for conversation and connection that had sometimes felt forced in their larger residences. The kitchen, though smaller than what they were accustomed to, had quickly become the heart of their home. Catherine had insisted on doing more of the cooking herself, finding therapeutic value in preparing meals for her family. William often joined her in the evenings, chopping vegetables while they discussed the day's events. These simple domestic rituals felt revolutionary in the context of their royal obligations. Walking through the cottage's garden that first week, Catherine had envisioned summer evenings when the children could play freely while she and William entertained close friends in a relaxed atmosphere. The gardens offered privacy that was rare in their world, bordered by ancient trees that had witnessed generations of royal family life. The proximity to Windsor Castle meant that the children could easily visit their great-grandmother for impromptu tea parties or quiet conversations. Queen Elizabeth had expressed particular delight at having her great-grandchildren so nearby, and Catherine often found herself coordinating casual visits that would have required extensive planning from their previous London base. William had thrown himself into local community life with enthusiasm that surprised even Catherine. He'd begun exploring the nearby villages, stopping at local shops and pubs with a casual ease that demonstrated how much he valued this return to relative normalcy. The people of Windsor had welcomed the family with warmth and respect, understanding the delicate balance between acknowledging their royal status and allowing them space to simply exist as neighbors. The morning routine at Adelaide Cottage had evolved into something beautifully ordinary. Catherine would wake early, before the children, to enjoy a few minutes of solitude with her tea while planning the day ahead. William often joined her during these quiet moments, and they discovered that some of their most meaningful conversations happened in this unguarded time before their official duties began. Their evenings had transformed as well. Instead of formal dinners or official engagements that kept them apart, they found themselves sharing simple meals and helping with homework around the kitchen table. The cottage's cozy sitting room had become a gathering place where they'd curl up together to watch films or read stories to the children. Catherine had noticed how the move had affected each of their children differently. Charlotte thrived on the adventure of a new environment, constantly discovering hidden corners of the cottage and estate. George seemed to appreciate the increased privacy and the opportunity to develop interests away from constant observation. Lewis, still young enough to adapt quickly, had embraced the change with typical toddler enthusiasm. The staff arrangements at Adelaide Cottage were deliberately minimal compared to their previous households. Catherine and William had chosen to maintain their privacy by limiting the number of people with regular access to their home. This decision had resulted in more hands-on parenting and a family dynamic that felt refreshingly authentic. As that first month at Windsor drew to a close, Catherine found herself standing in the same kitchen where she'd had her first cup of tea in their new home. The cottage had already begun to feel like theirs, filled with the children's artwork on the refrigerator, William's books scattered on side tables, and the comfortable chaos that comes with a house truly being lived in rather than simply occupied. The autumn months at Adelaide Cottage brought unexpected challenges that tested Catherine and William's commitment to their new lifestyle. The first major adjustment came when they realized how different school logistics would be from Windsor. Catherine found herself navigating unfamiliar routes to Lambrook School, learning the rhythms of a new community while maintaining the careful balance between royal protocol and normal parenting. William had developed a morning routine that involved walking the grounds of the estate before the family woke up. These solitary walks had become essential to his mental well-being, offering him time to process the mounting responsibilities that came with his evolving role within the royal family. The ancient oak trees and manicured lawns of Windsor provided a sanctuary where he could think clearly about the future of the monarchy and his family's place within it. Catherine discovered that living so close to Windsor Castle brought unexpected complications alongside its benefits. While the children loved their impromptu visits with the Queen, the proximity meant that royal obligations could intrude on family time more easily than before. She found herself constantly negotiating between her desire to be available to support the Queen and her commitment to protecting her children's sense of normalcy. The cottage's smaller scale had forced them to be more intentional about their possessions and space usage. Catherine had embraced this constraint, finding joy in creating a home that prioritized comfort over grandeur. She'd spent hours arranging furniture to maximize both functionality and coziness, discovering that the intimate scale of the cottage encouraged more meaningful family interactions. Prince George had begun showing increased interest in the history of Windsor Castle, often asking William to explain the significance of various buildings and traditions during their weekend explorations of the estate. These father-son conversations had deepened their relationship in ways that surprised both Catherine and William, as George demonstrated a natural curiosity about his heritage that went beyond childish fascination. Princess Charlotte had formed an unexpected friendship with one of the groundskeeper's daughters, a relationship that Catherine carefully nurtured while being mindful of the security implications. Watching Charlotte navigate normal childhood friendships within the context of her royal identity had given Catherine new insights into the challenges her children would face as they grew older. The cottage's kitchen had become the site of Catherine's most ambitious domestic experiments. She'd begun cooking more elaborate meals, partly as a creative outlet, and partly as a way of providing her family with comforting routines. William often found her there in the late afternoons, flower in her hair, and a determined expression on her face as she attempted recipes that pushed her culinary boundaries. Their relationship with the local community had evolved beyond polite acknowledgement into something approaching genuine belonging. William had begun stopping regularly at the local pub, where conversations with longtime Windsor residents had given him perspectives on rural life and community values that informed his understanding of contemporary Britain. Catherine had started exploring the historical gardens and lesser-known areas of the Windsor estate, often accompanied by Lewis, who delighted in these adventures. These explorations had revealed hidden gems within the familiar landscape, from forgotten rose gardens to ancient stone structures that sparked her imagination and provided peaceful retreats when royal life felt overwhelming. The proximity to Heathrow Airport, which they'd initially considered a drawback, had proven surprisingly beneficial for managing William's international travel commitments. The convenience allowed him to spend more time at home between engagements, reducing the strain that constant travel had previously placed on their family life. Evening routines at Adelaide Cottage had settled into patterns that reflected their personalities and preferences. Catherine often spent the time after the children's bedtime reading in the cottage's small library, while William used these quiet hours to catch up on correspondence and prepare for upcoming engagements. The cottage's limited guest accommodations had forced them to be more selective about overnight visitors, resulting in more intimate gatherings with their closest friends and family members. Catherine particularly enjoyed hosting Catherine's parents, who seemed to thrive in the cottage's relaxed atmosphere and could help with the children in ways that felt natural rather than formal. Winter preparations at Adelaide Cottage had required Catherine and William to think practically about heating, maintenance, and weather-related challenges in ways they'd never had to consider in their previous residences. William had taken particular pride in learning to maintain the cottage's vintage heating system, viewing it as an essential life skill rather than a task for staff members. The children's bedrooms had become expressions of their individual personalities in ways that hadn't been possible in more formal royal residences. Charlotte had covered her walls with artwork and photographs, while George had created a corner dedicated to his growing collection of aviation books and model planes. Catherine had begun hosting informal coffee mornings for other parents from the children's school, using these gatherings to build relationships within their new community while carefully maintaining appropriate boundaries about their royal status. These events had proven successful in creating a support network that benefited both her family and their neighbors. The cottage's garden had become William's unexpected passion project. He'd begun learning about horticulture and had started planning improvements that would enhance the outdoor space for family use while respecting its historical character. His enthusiasm for this project had surprised Catherine, who watched with amusement as her husband consulted gardening books with the same intensity he brought to studying constitutional law. Daily life at Adelaide Cottage had developed its own rhythm, distinct from the formal schedules that governed their official duties. Mornings began with family breakfast around the kitchen table, where conversation ranged from school projects to weekend plans without the underlying tension of public scrutiny that had characterized their previous homes. Spring arrived at Adelaide Cottage with a burst of energy that transformed both the landscape and the family's daily routines. Catherine had spent the winter months planning improvements to their garden space, and as the weather warmed, she threw herself into creating an outdoor environment where the children could play safely while she and William could entertain guests in a relaxed setting. The cottage's proximity to Windsor Great Park had opened up new possibilities for family activities that would have been complicated from their London base. William had begun taking the children on weekend cycling expeditions through the park's extensive trail system, adventures that combined exercise with natural education as he pointed out wildlife and explained the ecosystem's delicate balance. Catherine had discovered that living at Windsor during the spring months meant witnessing the estate's transformation in ways that few people ever experienced. The ancient trees burst into bloom with dramatic timing, creating a natural calendar that marked the passage of weeks through changes in color and fragrance rather than mere dates on official schedules. The children's adaptation to Windsor life had reached a new level of comfort by spring. Prince George had begun bringing school friends home for casual playdates, something that required careful coordination with security, but resulted in the kind of normal childhood experiences that Catherine and William had always hoped to provide their children. Princess Charlotte had developed an obsession with the horses at the Windsor stables, spending weekend mornings helping with basic care tasks under careful supervision. Her enthusiasm had reminded Catherine of her own childhood love of horses, and she found herself joining Charlotte for these stable visits, rediscovering her passion for equestrian activities. Prince Louis had claimed the cottage's back garden as his personal kingdom, where he conducted elaborate adventures that involved every outdoor toy they owned, and several he'd improvised from garden tools and household items. Catherine often watched him from the kitchen window, marveling at his ability to create entire worlds from simple objects and natural surroundings. The cottage's limited storage space had forced the family to be more organized about their possessions, but Catherine had discovered unexpected benefits to this constraint. With fewer belongings cluttering their living spaces, each item in the cottage felt more intentional and meaningful, creating an environment that felt genuinely homey rather than simply well-appointed. William's relationship with the Windsor estate staff had evolved into something approaching friendship, as his regular presence allowed for casual conversations and shared projects that wouldn't have been possible from their London residence. He'd begun participating in estate management discussions, gaining practical insights into land stewardship that informed his environmental advocacy work. The cottage's small dining room had become Catherine's favorite space for hosting intimate dinner parties. She discovered that the room's cozy scale encouraged more meaningful conversations among their guests, creating an atmosphere where even their most formal acquaintances seemed to relax and engage more authentically. Catherine had begun exploring Windsor's local shops and services with increasing confidence, developing relationships with shopkeepers and service providers that felt refreshingly normal. The local florist had become particularly important to her weekly routine, as she had taken on the responsibility of arranging fresh flowers throughout the cottage. The proximity to London remained essential for their official duties, but Catherine and William had begun to appreciate the psychological benefits of returning to Windsor each evening. The cottage represented a clear boundary between their public and private lives in ways that their London residents never had, allowing them to decompress more effectively after demanding public engagements. Evening meals at Adelaide Cottage had evolved into elaborate family productions, with each child taking on age-appropriate responsibilities for meal preparation and cleanup. Catherine had discovered that cooking together created natural opportunities for important conversations that might have felt forced in more formal settings. The cottage's master bedroom had become a sanctuary where Catherine and William could retreat for private conversations about everything from parenting challenges to strategic decisions about their royal roles. The room's intimate scale and comfortable furnishing encouraged honest communication in ways that larger, more formal bedrooms had not. William had begun using the cottage's small study as a base for developing new initiatives that reflected his growing environmental concerns. The space's informal atmosphere seemed to spark his creativity, leading to policy proposals and partnership ideas that surprised even Catherine with their innovative approaches to traditional royal advocacy. The children's homework routines had simplified dramatically since the move to Windsor. The cottage's kitchen table served as a natural study space where Catherine could supervise all three children simultaneously while preparing dinner, creating an efficient system that left more time for family activities. Catherine had started hosting regular coffee meetings with other royal family members who appreciated the cottage's relaxed atmosphere. These informal gatherings had strengthened family relationships while providing opportunities to discuss both personal matters and royal business in a setting that encouraged honest communication. The cottage's front garden had become William's pride and joy, as he'd taken personal responsibility for maintaining the flower beds and lawn areas visible from the road. His attention to these details reflected a desire to contribute positively to the Windsor community's overall appearance, while taking satisfaction in physical labor. Local wildlife had begun to treat the cottage's gardens as their own territory, providing the children with constant entertainment and educational opportunities. Catherine often found herself consulting field guides to answer questions about the various birds, squirrels, and occasional deer that visited their outdoor spaces. The cottage's limited guest bathroom had forced Catherine to be more strategic about entertaining, but she discovered that smaller gatherings often resulted in more meaningful social connections. Friends and family members seemed to appreciate the cottage's intimate scale, which encouraged relaxed conversation rather than formal interaction. Summer at Adelaide Cottage brought the family's first full seasonal cycle in their Windsor home, and with it came a deeper understanding of what their forever home truly meant to each family member. Catherine had spent months observing how the cottage's rhythms aligned with their family's natural preferences, and she realized that this was the first home where they'd all genuinely thrived rather than simply adapted. The longer summer days had extended their outdoor time significantly, with evening meals frequently moving to the cottage's back garden, where William had installed a simple dining set under the old apple tree. These outdoor dinners had become some of Catherine's most treasured family moments, as conversations flowed naturally without the distractions of phones or television. Prince George had surprised everyone by developing a serious interest in photography during the summer months. Using a camera William had given him to document life at Adelaide Cottage from a child's perspective. His photographs captured details that adults often missed, from close-ups of garden insects to candid shots of family members engaged in everyday activities. The cottage's relationship with Windsor Castle had deepened beyond mere proximity during the summer months. The Queen had begun making regular informal visits to Adelaide Cottage, appearing at their kitchen door for impromptu tea visits that delighted the children and provided Catherine with insights into royal family dynamics that she'd never experienced before. Catherine had begun hosting summer garden parties that brought together their London friends, local Windsor acquaintances, and extended royal family members in combinations that would have been impossible to arrange from any other residence. These gatherings had revealed the cottage's unique ability to make everyone feel comfortable regardless of their social background or relationship to the royal family. William's summer project had involved creating a vegetable garden behind the cottage, an endeavor that had engaged all three children and produced surprisingly successful crops of tomatoes, herbs, and root vegetables. The garden had become a source of family pride and had provided practical lessons about sustainability and food production that aligned with William's environmental advocacy. The cottage's small size had proven particularly beneficial during the summer heat, as it required minimal energy to cool and encouraged the family to spend more time outdoors rather than retreating to air-conditioned spaces. Catherine had appreciated this natural push toward outdoor living, which had resulted in increased physical activity and more informal family time. Princess Charlotte had begun organizing elaborate outdoor plays in the cottage's garden, recruiting her brothers and visiting friends as cast members while Catherine and William served as audience. These performances had revealed Charlotte's natural leadership abilities and creative talents while providing entertainment that brought the entire family together. The local Windsor community had embraced the royal family's presence during their first summer at Adelaide Cottage in ways that exceeded Catherine's expectations. Invitations to local events had increased, and she found herself genuinely excited about village fairs and community gatherings that provided insight into British rural life. Prince Louis had discovered a passion for gardening during the summer months, working alongside William to maintain flower beds and learning to identify different plants and their care requirements. His enthusiasm for these outdoor activities had provided William with a perfect companion for weekend garden projects that might have been solitary endeavors. The cottage's limited air conditioning had encouraged the family to develop creative strategies for staying cool during heat waves. From afternoon visits to the castle's cooler stone interiors to evening walks through the shaded areas of Windsor Great Park. These adaptations had brought them closer to the natural rhythms of the seasons. Catherine had begun using the summer months to establish traditions that would define their family's annual cycle at Adelaide Cottage. Weekly picnics in different areas of Windsor Great Park had become anticipated events, with each child taking turns choosing the location and menu for these outdoor adventures. The cottage's master bedroom had been transformed during summer renovations that Catherine had personally overseen, creating a space that better reflected their shared aesthetic preferences and provided improved storage for their growing collection of family mementos and photographs from their Windsor adventures. William's morning walks had extended during the longer summer days, and he'd begun inviting individual children to join him on these expeditions around the estate. These one-on-one walking conversations had provided him with insights into each child's personality and concerns that might have been difficult to discover in group family settings. The cottage's kitchen had become the testing ground for Catherine's growing interest in seasonal cooking, as she experimented with recipes that incorporated vegetables from their garden and herbs from the cottage's established herb garden. These culinary adventures had engaged the children in food preparation and had resulted in memorable family meals. Local wildlife had become increasingly comfortable around Adelaide Cottage during the summer months, providing the children with regular entertainment and educational opportunities. Catherine had begun keeping a family journal documenting wildlife sightings, creating a record of their first year's natural observations that she planned to continue annually. The cottage's front porch had been furnished with comfortable seating where Catherine and William could enjoy evening conversations after the children's bedtime, watching the sunset over the Windsor landscape while discussing everything from daily logistics to long-term family goals. Summer entertaining at Adelaide Cottage had revealed the cottage's perfect scale for hosting meaningful gatherings without the overwhelming formality that characterized events at their other residences. Catherine had discovered that friends and family members seemed to relax more completely in the cottage's intimate environment, leading to deeper conversations and stronger relationships. As autumn returned to Adelaide Cottage for the second time since their move, Catherine found herself reflecting on how profoundly their lives had changed since settling into their Windsor forever home. The cottage had evolved from a practical solution to housing needs into something far more significant, a place where their family had discovered authentic happiness and genuine connection with each other and their community. The anniversary of their move approached with little fanfare, but Catherine had begun planning a quiet family celebration that would acknowledge how much they'd all grown during their time at Windsor. She compiled a photo album documenting their first full year at the cottage, from those early tentative morning cups of tea in an unfamiliar kitchen to recent images of the children confidently navigating their established routines. William had surprised Catherine by expressing his desire to make additional long-term investments in the cottage's infrastructure and gardens, suggesting that their temporary residence had become something he envisioned maintaining for decades rather than years. His enthusiasm for improvements reflected a level of commitment to Windsor life that exceeded even Catherine's expectations. The children had reached a level of comfort at Adelaide Cottage that made their previous homes seem like distant memories. Prince George had begun referring to Windsor as simply home without any qualifiers, while Princess Charlotte had started making long-term plans for garden projects that revealed her assumption they would remain at the cottage for years to come. The cottage's role in their family's emotional well-being had become increasingly clear as they navigated various challenges and celebrations throughout their second year in residence. During difficult periods related to royal duties or family obligations, returning to Adelaide Cottage provided reliable comfort and restoration that had been missing from their previous living arrangements. Catherine's relationship with the local Windsor community had deepened into genuine friendships that enriched her life beyond the cottage's walls. She'd become a regular participant in village activities and had developed a network of local connections that provided support and perspective that differed significantly from her London social circles. The cottage's influence on their parenting style had been transformative, allowing Catherine and William to be more hands-on and present in their children's daily lives. The informal atmosphere and practical scale of their home had eliminated many of the barriers that formal royal residences had created between parents and children. William's environmental initiatives had gained new depth and authenticity through his practical experience maintaining the cottage's gardens and grounds. His advocacy work now reflected genuine personal experience with sustainable living practices rather than merely theoretical understanding of environmental issues. The Queen's frequent visits to Adelaide Cottage had created unprecedented opportunities for the children to develop meaningful relationships with their great-grandmother outside the formal constraints of royal protocol. These casual interactions had enriched both the Queen's daily life and the children's understanding of their family heritage. Catherine had begun documenting their cottage life through a private journal that captured both significant family moments and ordinary daily experiences that she wanted to preserve for future reflection. This writing had become an important creative outlet that helped her process the unique challenges and joys of their unusual lifestyle. The cottage's master suite had been completely personalized during their second year of residence, transformed into a retreat that reflected Catherine and William's shared aesthetic preferences and provided a sanctuary where they could escape from public pressures and focus on their relationship as a couple. Local traditions and seasonal celebrations had become integral to their family's annual rhythm, with the children eagerly anticipating village events and Windsor community gatherings that had become as important to their social calendar as official royal engagements. The cottage's kitchen had evolved into command central for family logistics, where Catherine coordinated everything from school schedules to royal duties, while maintaining the informal atmosphere that encouraged spontaneous family conversations and connections. Prince Louis had grown into his role as the cottage's official gardening assistant, working alongside William to maintain flower beds and vegetable plots while developing an appreciation for outdoor work that surprised both parents with its depth and consistency. The cottage's limited space had forced the family to be more intentional about their possessions and activities, resulting in a lifestyle that prioritized experiences over material accumulation and emphasized quality time together over individual entertainment. Evening routines at Adelaide Cottage had settled into patterns that maximized family connection while respecting each person's individual needs and preferences. These routines had become so established that disruptions due to royal duties felt genuinely jarring rather than merely inconvenient. Catherine's role as cottage manager had revealed organizational skills and domestic interests that had been suppressed by the extensive staff support available at their other residences. She discovered genuine satisfaction in personally overseeing her family's daily environment and routines. The cottage's guest accommodations had been optimized to provide comfortable but intimate hospitality that encouraged meaningful visits from friends and family members while maintaining the family's privacy and routine integrity. As their second autumn at Adelaide Cottage began, Catherine realized that their forever home had given them something she hadn't known they were missing: the opportunity to live as a normal family within extraordinary circumstances, creating authentic happiness that transcended their royal obligations and public responsibilities. The cottage had proven that home isn't defined by grandeur or formality, but by the love, laughter, and genuine connection that fill its rooms each day.